America, the Empire of Fear, Part 1, The Bloody Birth of a Continent. The year was 1492, when the European navigator Christopher Columbus crossed the Atlantic Ocean and reached the American continent. One of the greatest turning points in human history began. Perhaps if Columbus had foreseen the massacres, exiles, slavery, and the destruction of millions of lives that would follow, he might never have embarked on that voyage. Because the discovery of America was not merely the finding of a new continent, it was also the beginning of invasions, exploitation, and the rise of one of the most powerful empires the modern world would ever know. At that time, America was not an empty land of wilderness alone. It was home to civilizations. The Maya civilization, the Aztec Empire, the Inca Empire, and nations such as the Cherokee, Apache, and Sioux had lived on these lands for centuries, with their own cultures, beliefs, and social systems. But for the Spanish, English, French, and Dutch colonists arriving from Europe, America was not a civilization to understand. It was a vast fortune to conquer. Lands were occupied, villages were burned. Thousands of indigenous people died from disease, war, and forced displacement. What happened in many regions is today described by historians as the Great Catastrophe of Native Peoples. The romantic cowboy stories seen in Hollywood films often concealed this dark past. The true history of America is not only a story of heroism, it is also a history of blood, hunger, and colonialism. During the 17th and 18th centuries, the colonies expanded. European settlers established massive plantations. England imposed heavy taxes on the American colonies, creating deep resentment among the colonists. Eventually, the settlers rebelled against their own rulers. The conflicts between 1765 and 1783 turned into what became known as the American Revolutionary War. On July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was proclaimed, and the United States was officially born. In this declaration, figures such as Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and George Washington wrote that all people were born free, that governments existed to serve the people, and that the people had the right to change their rulers if necessary. These ideas were revolutionary for humanity. Yet there was a profound contradiction. While the new nations spoke of liberty, indigenous peoples continued to be driven from their lands, and enslaved Africans continued to labor in chains. In 1783, with the signing of the Treaty of Paris, Britain officially recognized the United States of America. In 1787, the Constitution was adopted. A federal system was established. The presidential model was created. George Washington became the first president. The new nation had begun to grow. But this expansion often came not through peace, but through wars, seized lands, and the forced removal of native peoples. As America expanded westward, thousands of indigenous families were expelled from their ancestral lands. Some tribes resisted. Some fought until the very end. Others vanished through famine and epidemics. As industry developed, a new demand emerged: cheap labor. This demand was fulfilled through millions of enslaved Africans brought forcibly from Africa. African men, women, and children were chained and packed into ships. During the brutal voyages that lasted for weeks, thousands died from disease and starvation. Those who survived were sold in slave markets across America. Families were torn apart. Children were separated from their mothers. Human beings were bought and sold as merchandise. Particularly in the southern states, enslaved people working in cotton and tobacco plantations played a major role in the growth of the American economy. But over time, the northern states increasingly opposed slavery. This tension eventually exploded into the great conflict known as the American Civil War. After the war, slavery was officially abolished. But even when laws changed, minds did not change easily. For many years, Black Americans continued to face severe discrimination. In many states, they were barred from restaurants, schools, and public spaces. During this era, the organization known as the Ku Klux Klan became infamous for terror and violence directed against Black communities. America's 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, became one of the most important figures supporting the abolition of slavery. In 1865, he was assassinated in a theater. Today, many people regard him as one of the greatest symbols of freedom in American history. Years passed. The young nation, forged through wars, gradually became one of the most powerful countries in the world. Its economy expanded, its industry advanced, its military grew stronger, and eventually, the United States became the greatest global power of the modern age. But behind that power lay the lost worlds of indigenous peoples, slave ships crossing the oceans, civil wars, and the suffering of millions. And even today, one question remains. Can an empire truly be built only upon freedom? Or is there always a hidden darkness behind every great power? We have reached the end of America, the Empire of Fear. Part 1. We will continue with Part 2. If this story captured your interest, please continue watching. Your author, Mario Spola, asks, what is the American Empire of Fear?